Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Gut Health with Laura Woodworth, our registered dietitian nutritionist. I'm Holly Reed. I'm a patient care coordinator here at Heart of Wellness and also the marketing specialist. Heart of Wellness is a multidisciplinary health clinic located in Tumwater, Washington. We are a practice that is committed to facilitating transformational health for the people in our community through collaboration, continuous learning, and most of all, caring. Currently, we have a staff of 7 naturopathic physicians, 2 acupuncturists, a physical therapist, a massage therapist, and, as you know, our registered dietitian nutritionist, Laura Woodworth. Laura is a registered dietitian nutritionist with a master's degree in nutrition from Bastyr University. She joined Heart of Wellness in 2020 and works very closely with all our naturopathic physicians to support patients in a wide variety of nutrition-related concerns, from metabolic imbalances and inflammation to support with transition to whole foods diets, which can encourage healthy weight loss and overall improved health. Following the presentation, Laura will be able to answer a few questions, time permitting. We ask that you keep your microphone muted during the presentation and use the raise hand function during the Q&A portion, or put your question in the chat window and we'll try to get to you, like I said, time permitting. Please join me in welcoming Laura Woodworth for Gut Health with Heart of Wellness.
Thank you, Holly. It's very nice things that you said. So let me share my screen with you. And I want to thank you all for coming. I'm really excited about this. I feel like I could prepare forever. So I just want you to know that I'm going to be reading from a script a little bit because I've got some pretty dense information to start out with. So I apologize for not looking you in the eye. I'd like to, but here we go. So first we have a disclaimer. Although I am a dietitian by profession, in this context, I am not your personal dietitian. I have put considerable effort into creating this presentation for you. However, the information here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice. You have to come and see me personally for that. I just need to move this. Okay. So first off, why care? Learning how you can increase and support your gut health can provide you with some tools that will allow you to take control of your own health, potentially reducing inflammation, improving your immunity, increasing your energy, and stabilizing your moods, and even helping you sleep. Today, I'd like to talk to you about what we mean when we say gut health, and to give you some ideas about effective and worthwhile adjustments that you can make to your daily habits that will nurture your personal microbiome. Here's how it will go. First, I'll give you an overview of the form and function of the digestive tract, because I really think it's important to have a deeper understanding of all the things that are going on inside of you. And then we'll hone in on the lower GI and the microbiome. But we're going to sprinkle in a few quizzes along the way to keep you on your toes. From there, we'll learn what our microbiome is in the context of probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics. And finally, we'll look at habits and foods that can help foster a healthy and thriving microbiome. And hopefully we'll have a good conversation about it. I need to apologize. They're painting my house today and my dogs are barking, so I apologize. So move on. So first we'll start with the big picture. I'm really sorry about that. The digestive system is essentially a very long muscular tube that includes the oral cavity, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine. Food enters the digestive tract and passes along its length. On the way, our salivary glands, our pancreas, our gallbladder, and certain specialized cells release substances that help prepare the food we've eaten for use. Much of the actual absorption of the nutrients occurs in the first few feet or so of the small intestine. What remains continues along the ileum, which is the third section of the small intestine, where the bulk of the water is absorbed. And the rest goes into the colon, becomes food for our microbiome, and finally is expelled as stool. As a side note here, when we eat highly processed foods like Coca-Cola or Costco muffins, the nutrients are processed or broken down for us already and easily absorbed. This means that in a way, these foods have been pre-digested. And so most of those nutrients are quickly absorbed in the first part of our digestion, leaving nothing for the stomach to do in terms of breaking things up or anything to feed our microbes further down. This is a great reason to choose whole foods over processed ones, just in general. We don't have 19 feet of small intestine and 5 feet of colon for nothing. And now we have our first quiz question. How much saliva do you think our salivary glands produce each day? Just give it a little bit of time. Over 67%. Maybe we're at the total, I don't know, 85% is pretty good. Anybody else want to vote real quick?
Last chance.
It looks like the vote was 0.5 liters. The answer is 1.5 liters. Did I go too soon?
You're fine, Laura.
Oh, okay. Okay, whenever I can't stop sharing the poll results. Can you do it, Holly?
Yeah, mine should be off by now.
Okay. Okay. Can everybody see the slides now and no longer the polls? Okay. So 1 to 1.5 liters of saliva. And I just thought this was a good visual, maybe a little crass, but here's about what 1 liter looks like in a beer mug. So that's quite a bit of saliva to imagine every day. All right, and then we will move on. So our saliva is 99% water. The remaining 1% is mostly a digestive enzyme called salivary amylase that starts to break down the starches in the food we eat in our mouth. Have you ever been super hungry and then caught the smell of something cooking that you like? The cephalic stage prepares the stomach to receive food by increasing production of gastric juices and saliva. Simply thinking of food can provide the neural input to get the cephalic phase going. It can be initiated by sight, smell, thought, or taste. I'm sure you can think of a time that you experienced this. I remember one time after a long, early morning walk up and down the hills of San Francisco when I was visiting a friend, coming around the corner and being hit by the most delicious smell of breakfast cooking. My cephalic phase was definitely initiated. My mouth started watering. The larger your appetite, the larger your cephalic phase reaction. And this helps prepare everything for digestion. And by the way, anxiety and stress can inhibit the cephalic phase, which is why taking the time to practice mindful eating can help so much with digestion. So anyway, back to the stomach. The stomach mixes the meal we ingested with gastric juices over a period of 2 to 4 hours and eventually brings the pH to a very acidic level of 1.5 to 2. After the first hour or so, the stomach is churning like clothing in a washing machine. This acidity kills most of the microorganisms in the food, helps to denature proteins, and inactivates most of the enzymes in food. It also helps break down plant cell walls and connective tissues in meat. Fortunately, our stomach lining has a strong coating of mucus, which protects the cells from the hydrochloric acid, that our parietal cells secrete. When the food material in the stomach has become uniform in consistency and pH, the pyloric sphincter releases the chyme, as it's now called, into the duodenum, which is the very top section of the small intestine. The small intestine is where the party is at with the enzymes. It's where everything happens in terms of mixing and absorbing. The food has been broken down and the nutrients made somewhat available. Now the gallbladder releases bile, which helps break down the fats, and the pancreas releases enzymes to continue the work that was started in the mouth, breaking down the carbohydrates. The inner walls of the small intestine are very different from any other part of our GI tract. There are circular folds every ½ inch or so, as well as finger-like projections that extend into the inside of the intestine. These are called villi. Coating each villus are even tinier finger-like projections called microvilli that are covered in epithelial cells that absorb the nutrients. Beneath the epithelial mucosal layers, each microvilli has nerve endings. And another quiz question: how long do you think the small intestine is? Do, 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 do.
Is everyone able to see that okay?
I can see it. These are the results. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Okay, the poll's closed.
Polls closed.
Okay, so it looks like people thought that it was either about 12 feet or about 18 feet. And the answer is, just a second, I need to figure out how to close the poll window before I go to the next screen. I apologize. Well, okay, there it is. So it's actually about 19 feet, maybe 18 to 20 feet, depending on how big of a person you are and how tall. I just have to take a second here because I can't seem to get rid of the poll. I apologize. Keep playing. Okay, so the average human small intestine is longer than the height of a giraffe at about 19 feet long. And then we'll go back to talking about the inside of it. So the small intestine has an inner diameter of only about 2.5 centimeters, but the amount of surface area is just incredible. The circular folds of the inner walls along the villi and the microvilli, like we talked about before, amplify the small intestinal surface area by 60 to 120 times. This is equal to about half of a badminton court or 30 meters of surface area. And there's a lot of different calculations that are done on this. Some people say it's as big as a tennis court. It's hard to know because every person has a different small intestine. Contractions of the smooth muscle tissue move the villi back and forth, exposing the epithelial surfaces to the liquefied intestinal contents. Each microvilli has nerves beneath the initial layer of mucous membrane, as well as an extensive capillary network that receives the absorbed nutrients. Whatever isn't absorbed continues into the rest of the small intestine where most of the water is absorbed, and then through the ileocecal valve and into the colon, also known as the large intestine. Typically, it takes 4 to 8 hours for food to pass through the entire small intestine, which is coiled beneath the stomach. We're going to get into some poop talk. So everybody brace yourself. The colon is larger in diameter, but only 5 feet long and with just 2 meters of surface area. The environment in the colon is anaerobic, which means that there is very little oxygen to be found. Most remaining water is absorbed here and stool forms. Material stays in the large intestine for 10 to 12 hours. Fecal matter, stool, or poop is 75% water and 25% solids. Fully a third of the solids are actually intestinal bacteria. Sorry if anybody's super grossed out. The other 2/3 are undigested materials. So the gut microbiome. The microbiome was not generally recognized to exist by the scientific community, at least prevalently, until the late 1990s. Up until then, most people saw the colon as simply a holding place for stool. It is estimated that microbes outnumber our human cells 10 to 1. The majority live in our gut, particularly in the large intestine. Isn't it crazy that we ignored them for so long? Our GI microbiome has been compared to an ancient rainforest, so complex that we have a hard time comprehending the various functions and chain reactions occurring in a healthy one. Here are a few of the things a healthy gut does for us. It salvages calories, produces short chain fatty acids, which we'll talk about later, synthesizes vitamin K and folic acid, produces arginine. I need to skip. Thank you. Okay. Produces short chain fatty acids, synthesizes vitamin K and folic acid, produces arginine and glutamine, conjugates bile acids so that they can be sent back to the liver and recycled, which, the gallbladder releases the bile, and then it's used to break down the fats, and then it comes back and we recycle it, which is amazing. It protects against pathogens, promotes anti-inflammatory cytokines, and generally supports our immune cells. Let's see. So what are they? Let's go back to the short chain fatty acids. I got a little confused. I'm going to go back. Healthy gut. What are the microbiome? The human microbiota is made up of bacteria, eukaryotes, and viruses. The population is highly variable and is still pretty mysterious, to be frank. In this case, we're focusing on the bacteria that like to live in our gut. I'm going to try to say these, but I'll probably say them wrong. The firmicutes and the bacteroidetes dominate, but there are also proteobacteria, varicomicrobia, actinobacteria, fusobacteria, and cyanobacteria. Some have been studied more than others. Because these are living creatures, they all produce a product, if you will. And this leaves us with the short chain fatty acids. Some microbes exert a positive effect by fermenting dietary fiber into short chain fatty acids, such as acetic acid and butyric acid, which has then been shown to lower colonic pH and nourish the colonic mucosal barrier. And remember all those nerve endings I mentioned in each of the microvilli back in the small intestine? Our colon is thoroughly innervated. Those short chain fatty acids are turning out to play a large role in neuroimmunoendocrine signaling that we don't quite understand yet. We know that short chain fatty acids in particular have neuroactive properties, and that our gut microbiome is exerting influence on the vagus nerve, the immune system, our brain, and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or the HPA axis, via our extensive enteric nervous system and our bloodstream. So how can we help promote the good ones, the ones we want to live in our gut? One of the ways is that we can take probiotics. Some examples of ones that have been studied are here. The way that you can tell if they've been studied is that they'll have a number after them. It's important to find the right strain when you're choosing a supplement. If you plan to incorporate probiotic supplementation into your routine, you should talk to somebody on your healthcare team for helpful options. And then you can add prebiotics to your diet. These are fibers that nourish the microbiome. And these are some of the types that are found in different foods that we eat. Excuse me. Fructans, including inulin and fructooligosaccharides. I won't say the rest, but if you look over on the right here, you can see chicory. This is one of the, like, per ounce, the highest amount of prebiotic fiber in any of the plants. So when you have chicory coffee, you're getting some really good prebiotics and feeding those microbiome livers. So here's another quiz for you. What do you do to keep your gut healthy? And this one, yeah, thank you.
We'll give a few more moments for everyone to participate. Everyone that wants to participate.
And if you want to type it in the window too, if you don't see your option there, you could put it in the chat.
Last call. And here are your answer, Laura.
I do all of these things. All right, I'm gonna have to do the thing again where thank you. Okay. All right, we have some options here. Nurture your gut. Here's some of the ways. Maybe we should take a look. Did people add things to the chat at all about what they do?
Nope.
Okay. If anybody wants to put some of the things they do to nurture their gut in the window, that would be great, or questions about something I talked about before. But the biggest things you can do are just eat whole food. That would be like the number one thing. If you eat a lot of different kinds of whole foods, especially vegetables and fruits.
Can I jump in real quick, Laura? We did have a question earlier, and I think this is an appropriate time to ask.
Okay.
Judith wanted to know, could you define whole foods more specifically?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways to define a whole food is if it hasn't been processed by anyone except you. Or if it doesn't have any more of the ingredients than a couple is another good way. And whole foods is kind of there's a wide spectrum. You know, you could start on one end with Coca-Cola and Costco muffins. And then on the other end, you could have like an apple, a whole apple, and all in between is still processed. So like if you chop the apple up, it's still a whole food. It's just been chopped or processed, if you will. But if you have an apple and you slice it up and dry it out, then it's more processed. And some of the nutrients might not be as available, but it's still pretty whole. I would consider a food like, let's see, I'm trying to think of an example that's like in between. I guess granola would be a good one. Like if you made your own homemade granola and you put in oats and honey and things like that, that's a closer to a whole food, but not quite, because the oats aren't whole anymore. They've been sliced. Maybe they are whole actually, because oats I think are kept whole and they're just sliced up. I don't know. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what I mean. And moving on here, we talk about minimal added sugar. So having an apple is one thing, but having an apple with sugar added to it, that wouldn't be good. And now the food labels have added sugar and sugar on them. So you can actually see if you get a beverage, like if you got some milk, it would have sugars in it, but it wouldn't have added sugars because the sugars are an intrinsic part of the milk, the lactose. And then I put minimal pre-digested food because you know what I mean by that, I think. I won't go into that anymore. Another really big helpful thing is to decrease your stress. And that can become kind of a self-helping. Your gut can help you reduce your stress when you're eating whole foods, because some of the short chain fatty acids and other products that the microbiome releases, the microbiota release, are things that will actually decrease your stress. So eating foods with good fibers and prebiotics in them can help you decrease your stress, and then you can continue that process by maybe doing yoga or taking a hot bath at night to relax, giving yourself a minute, breathing. Another thing that can help your gut is to improve your sleep, and it all circles back to itself. It's like a self-feeding circle. And then just trying to get up and move. Like if you're working full time and you're sitting at your desk all day, if you even just let your Fitbit or whatever set an alarm, tell you, oh, it's time for me to get up, and just get up and just move around a little bit. And even that is a big deal, because you have, I mean, your intestines are right here, right? And if you're just sitting still all day, it's not very good for them. They're meant to move around. That's part of what helps move things along. So that's the reason for that. Is there any other comments or ideas here?
No.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to go back to was that cephalic reaction. When we eat food, when we think about food and we start salivating, and then our gastric juices start to be secreted, that is really helpful with digestion. And so when we take the time to learn how to do mindful eating and even meditation, that can really help with digestion in general. So that's something to think about also.
Laura,
Yeah.
Robin would like to know, she'd like you to explain a little bit more about what is pre-digested food.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Robin. So I think of pre-digested food as things that are processed. So like crackers, like if you buy some of those really delicious rice crackers at the co-op or wherever you like to shop, those are so good with some goat cheese on them, but those foods are already broken up and taken apart and then put back together into an easily digested form. And the reason we like that, or the reason that we end up eating pre-digested things, is because our mouth likes them. They make them so that they're crispy and delicious. And they make us want more because they don't last very long in our mouths. So we're like, oh, we need more food. We need more food. And this helps us to overeat. Like if you had the whole box of the crackers, it's easy to just keep eating them and not think about, well, what's a portion size? Because we just want more and more. And because it's pre-digested, it ends up being broken down in our stomach really quickly and then going straight into our small intestine and just boop, going right into our bloodstream. So hopefully that's clear.
She does want to know, are keto foods less likely to be considered pre-digested?
That's an interesting question, because keto foods are mostly fat and protein. And we don't find a lot of prebiotics or postbiotics in those foods. So when people are eating keto or eating keto foods, I wouldn't call them pre-digested at all. Usually they're meats. So there's a lot of meat, like protein fibers and things in there. And the fats also have to be digested. I think when I think of pre-digested foods, I more think of carbohydrate foods like chips or crackers or cake or things like that. that kind of leads me to the whole idea of the keto diet too, with in terms of the gut microbiome. I imagine there's a lot of studies going on right now, and I would be curious to see, what they say about that, because when you're on a keto diet, it's really hard to get enough fiber. So some people take fiber supplements and some people don't worry about it. I think that having that amount of fat in your diet is part of what keeps you regular, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Laura. Kelly would like to ask, what is mindful eating and how can we use meditation for healthy eating?
Oh, thank you, Kelly. So mindful eating is when you take the time, and there's, handouts and things that go with mindful eating that can guide you, that make sure they guide you through sitting down and really taking some deep breaths and having your food in front of you, but not doing anything else. Not having your phone next to you, not watching a TV show, but just sitting down and breathing. And then noticing, paying attention to your food, thinking about how the smell is, how it makes you feel, allowing yourself to really smell the food, and then take a bite and chew it carefully, and maybe even count your chews, like 20 chews before you swallow. And then pausing between each bite again and just getting grounded and breathing. That's what mindful eating looks like. It's not easy to shift your habits either. If you're somebody like I have been in my past, where I don't even sit down at the table to eat anymore. I just bring my stuff in the car, or like make a smoothie and just drink the smoothie like while I'm driving, which is not very mindful at all. And, you've got to wonder about eating foods that are blended. Is that really good for digestion? Because since you're swallowing your smoothie so quickly, you're not letting your mouth add the saliva to it. So one of the things that some dietitians tell people, and I think it might be a good idea, is to take a drink of your smoothie and really like swish it around in your mouth, kind of chew it, and then swallow it so that it's mixed with that salivary amylase like it should be. And it signals your stomach also before it comes in. Otherwise, you just gulp it and then it goes straight to your stomach, and your stomach's like, whoa, what just happened? I guess we better digest this. But wait, is it already digested? Anyways, thank you for that question. We also talked, the other question was about the meditation. The meditation in terms of healthy eating is more of a healthy lifestyle thing that contributes to the calm of the general body. So it's not as specific as mindful eating, but it's definitely helpful. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Holly. Anyone else?
Not yet.
Well, I do have a lot of resources on the next page. A lot of the articles that have more of this information in them, if you're interested. And I would also be happy to talk to you one-on-one in an appointment at the Heart of Wellness. Is there anything else you want to add, Holly?
We did have one more question come up. Robert Vadas asked if urinary problems can be associated with eating problems.
That's an interesting question, and I don't know the answer. I do know that I have had patients who have seemed to have urinary issues that go with foods that they eat, but I don't know the direct correlation. That's a tough one.
Any more questions for Laura? Dave asks, what are your thoughts on consuming fermented foods like kimchi?
That is such a great question, and I meant to actually include it, so thank you. Fermented foods are excellent for boosting our probiotics, for boosting our microbiome. I wanted to mention too, one of the things that can happen when we have kind of an out of balance digestive system, maybe our motor migratory complex is a little bit slowed because we're taking pain medications or something. What can happen sometimes is our bacteria can grow up into our small intestine. And so what will happen is we'll have it's called a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Because our bacteria are used to living in the large intestine where there's not a lot of oxygen, some of them really thrive when they come up into our small intestine, and our migratory motor complex, which is what basically keeps moving our intestines and pushing the food down, usually keeps that in check, but sometimes it doesn't. So when we are someone who might have that issue, sometimes taking probiotics or eating probiotic foods like kimchi can actually make it worse. So it's interesting to think about that, because yeah, we want to have the good bacteria, but we want the good bacteria to live where it's supposed to, which is in our colon. So as long as you don't have SIBO, I think taking probiotics and having also foods that are fermented is a great way to boost your microbiota. And it also gives some prebiotics, some fibers that come with the foods that it's made of. So definitely try to have a few tablespoons of that every day if you like it.
Kelly asks, are there foods you'd recommend to help ease uterine fibroids pains or adenomyosis?
Those are really good questions, and I don't have the answers here. That would be definitely something that you would have to talk to directly to one of us at the Heart of Wellness. And I'm not sure if I could answer it at this time. It's a tough one. Thank you for asking though.
Dave has a follow-up question asking, how does one determine whether they suffer from SIBO?
Well, I kind of opened a can of worms, literally. So there's a few different symptoms that go with SIBO. Generally, there's bloating, a lot of pain, and it's usually associated with eating those foods that actually have prebiotics in them, which I think if I can figure out how to go back up in my presentation, I could show you. Anyways, they're foods like maybe onions and garlic are some of the worst contributors. So there's certain foods that give us a sign that maybe there's an issue going on, or maybe not. And I don't want people to think that I'm telling them they have SIBO, because it's a very complicated thing to diagnose. But what goes with it is usually pain and bloating. And it doesn't seem to matter what people eat, and they get frustrated, but it turns out that that's what the low FODMAP diet helps with. So I guess I better stop there. If you want to talk more about it, you'll have to come and see me and get more specific.
Or one of our naturopathic physicians could also help you with diagnosis of SIBO.
Yes, very much.
I think we have time for one more question. We have, what are the best foods for hormonal balance and boosting adrenals?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, Melanie would like to know what the best foods are for hormonal balance and boosting adrenals.
That's another good question. So boosting the adrenals, that's more of a naturopath question. Although I would say it's more about meal timing when it comes to boosting, working on that. And then with the hormones, also a little more in the naturopath world, but I would recommend looking into seed cycling and seeds in terms of just things you can add to your diet. There's different types of seeds that seem to promote hormone balance. Is that for general?
That's wonderful, Laura.
Thank you. Well, I sure have enjoyed this. Thank you for the excellent questions, and I will show you this resource slide also. These are some of my favorite sources. If you have a lot more questions.
There are quite a few more questions that did come in, Laura. I would urge everyone to take the time to check out your resources, but to consider scheduling a free 15-minute visit with Laura or one of our naturopaths. Some of those questions are a bit more complex, and we definitely want to make sure that you have the time to address them at a visit. I'm going to go ahead and share our website here in the chat. It's got the whole visit or the whole webinar on it, heartofwellness.org/webinars, or you can find it from our main page, heartofwellness.org. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. I want to thank Laura especially for taking the time to put all this together. There's so much information, and to try to put it into one small webinar is impossible, but she did a wonderful job. Like I said, the webinar will be available on our website in the next week or so once our marketing team can put it up there. If you'd like to schedule an appointment with Laura, you can go to our website online, heartofwellness.org. Thank you so much for joining us today.